want to remind you of something really important today, and that's this. This is not complicated. It's not rocket science, but it can be a challenge. What you say to yourself is creating a reality because you are training your subconscious brain to believe something and therefore behave in a particular way. Well, hello there, and welcome into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I'm your host, Sam Hine, and it's my honor and privilege to have you joining me here today, where I want to talk to you about something that has been on my mind for, I'm going to say years, but I have been watching this behavior for a really long time, both in myself and in other people, and I wanted to talk about it today. One of the absolute honors I get is working with people from all over the globe, from all walks of life and all stages of their businesses, whether they're just starting out or they're top leaders and they're earning incredible incomes. I get to see the behaviors of those people who are super successful and those that are really struggling to get by. And today I want to talk about something that I personally have battled with for years, and that is our self-talk. I like to call it my inner bully, but I want to ask you today and speak into this. What are you speaking into being? Now, I'm going to give you an analogy today to help you understand where I'm coming from with this, because I really truly believe that this is potentially the one biggest thing that holds the most people back, and that is their own self-talk. But if you're anything like me, you hear people say to you, you need to do better with your self-talk. And you think to yourself, well, that's easier said than done. I often don't even know what it is that I'm saying to myself that's getting in my way. Or how do I speak to myself differently? So I'm going to give you a couple of tools that I've learned over the years, because these have been absolute game changers for me. And I know, I can tell you right now, the evidence is in my life. Every time I apply these tools, I see massive growth, massive change, and most importantly, a massive shift in the behaviors of not just myself, but the people around me, dramatically and quickly. So let's dive into the episode I want to call, What Are You Speaking Into Being? And help you change that self-sabotage, that self-talk, and take not just your business, but every area of your life to new levels. So let's dive on in. Back when I was a young girl, I got told, I don't even know by who, but by someone in my primary school years, that I couldn't catch a ball, and I got left out of team sports. Now, as I grew up, I used to say to people, I can't catch balls. Don't throw me a ball. I can't catch balls. I can't play team sport. As I became an adult, this language continued. I remember my mum used to also tell people, Sam can't catch. Don't throw her anything. She can't catch a ball for the life of her. When I met Greg, I said this to him. I made this statement to him. He went to throw something to me and I said, don't throw anything at me. I can't catch. I've got a reputation. And he went, what do you mean you can't catch? He said, I've seen you catch. I said, no, I'm not sporty. I can't catch. I don't do team sports. I'm not good at any sports. I'm really not athletic at all. And he went, I don't see that. He said, I've seen you water ski. I've seen you be sporty. I've seen you go to the gym. I've seen you catch things when you weren't thinking about it. What makes you think you can't catch? And I said, I don't know. I haven't been able to catch since I was a kid. And he said, is it that you can't catch, or is it that someone said that you can't catch and you've been telling yourself you can't catch for your whole life? And I stopped and I thought about it and I realized something. There was absolutely no evidence to say that I couldn't catch, except for the fact that I was telling people I couldn't catch. Now, I was also at that same time using language like, I'm a dumb blonde, because that's what people said to me as I was growing up. I was using language like, I'm not tech savvy. Any of you use that language? I bet you have. I hear that every day from people. And yet I had proven myself wrong time and time again, but I was still using that language. I was able to use a mobile phone. I was able to get onto a webinar. I was running a business, helping people understand technology. And here I was still using language that was old language that didn't have any foundation to it, but it was holding me back. I'd started believing it. Now, let's come back to the catching thing for a little minute, because this was language I'd used since I was a kid. And so Greg challenged me to stop using the language and just allow myself to prove myself wrong. He said, you don't have to say that you can catch, but I want to see you prove to yourself that that's a reality if it truly is. Because the thing is that what we say becomes reality because we're declaring it. Now, I want to give you another example of this. As I grew up, with the catching thing, with the sporting thing, I also told myself I'm not a sporty person. I'm not coordinated. Now, I also had a lot of people around me saying this, and probably because I'd been saying it for so long, many of them were just repeating back to me what I'd already taught them to say. But you might have heard the episode I did a while ago where I talked about my running journey. And the episode's titled These Feet Weren't Made for Walking. I was born with something called talipes, which is a version of club feet. And for my whole life, I thought my body wasn't built for running. But I want to use this analogy for a little moment because this is exactly how I turned it around for me. And this is where this language comes into play here. I hear a lot of people say things to me like, I'm not tech savvy, or I'm not good at leading people, or I can't do this, or I don't think I can do that. I'm really attuned now to the language that students in our courses are using because I know that the biggest shift I can make for them is not actually teaching them. I'm letting you in on a secret here right now. It's not actually teaching them how to do social media as much as it is helping them change their self-beliefs by first changing their language. So let me use this example for you. This is an analogy that changed my life, and I'm hoping that maybe for a listener or two today, it might change things for you too. You see, as I grew up, I believed I wasn't sporty, I wasn't fit, I wasn't someone who was ever made to be able to do cool things like run a half marathon. Again, if you want to hear that story, listen to that episode. It is still an ongoing journey and a really exciting challenge for me right now as I'm again training for my first ever half marathon. Nope, haven't run it yet, but we will be doing it later on this year, so watch this space. But here's the thing. I'd grown up thinking that I wasn't built to do something, I wasn't capable of doing something until somebody else sat right by my side and said to me, what makes you think that you can't? And I stopped and I realized there was no evidence to say that I couldn't because I'd never actually tried. My whole family were a family of marathon runners, and here I was thinking I just can't do it because I'm not capable of doing it. Well, how do I know? Because I'm using language that says I can't. So here's the shift that I made. As I was going through this new journey of learning what the new Sam was actually capable of by simply changing my language, I started saying something crazy. Now, keep in mind, I'd never run before in my life, but I started saying, instead of saying, I'm not a runner or I'm going to be a runner, which is just as bad as saying I'm not a runner because going to means one day. It means tomorrow. It's later on. It's down the track. It's not a reality now. It's also the same as I hope to, I'd like to, I'm believing to. No. We're going to start declaring language that changes the reality of who we behave like or who we are and how we behave today. So I started doing something crazy because, I'd had a couple of really amazing mentors in my life that had suggested this could actually be life-changing. And I changed the language I was using that day to declare something different over myself, which was, I'm a runner. Now, at first, this felt like it doesn't fit. This feels a little crazy. And while you could jump to an extreme like I did, you could also meet halfway, like, I'm fit. I'm learning to be a runner. I'm practicing being a runner. But I decided to go the whole way because why not? I'm always all in. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it right. So I went all in. I said, I'm a runner. And I woke up every day and I said, I'm a runner. Now, you might think, why on earth would you do that? Saying it doesn't create it. No. But what saying it does is it changes the way you behave. You see, if I start saying language like I'm a runner, I do a few things differently. For example, I might hydrate like a runner might hydrate. I might eat a little bit differently because runners don't eat the donut before they walk out the door. The runner might add some fresh fruit and veg into their meal or eat smaller meals or eat at specific times of the day that are going to serve the fact that they're a runner. And a runner trains. So a runner gets up, walks out that door and goes for a run. Now, you might be thinking, well, if you're not a runner, how did you run? I started small. I went around the block. I actually started with 100 meters. I would run for 30 seconds, which killed me, by the way, but I would run for 30 seconds and then I would walk for 2 minutes. I'd run for 30 seconds and I'd walk for 2 minutes. And I did that for about a week. Then I changed it. I'd run for a minute and then I'd walk for a minute. I'd run for a minute and I'd walk for a minute. And I did that for a really long time until I found myself gradually but surely, within a few months, I could run my first kilometer. All I changed initially was my language. That was the first step. I'm a runner. And that changed my behavior because suddenly my brain was being trained to believe a new reality. Instead of my brain believing that one day, or hopefully, or down the track, or what I was doing was simply saying, I'm not a runner, I can't run, I don't run. My brain was being trained into believing this because I was creating this reality within myself that really had no proof. Now, let's turn this into practical things that you can use within your business. And this comes back to a lot of self-awareness. Sometimes I've got to really stop and think to myself, what language am I using around this right now? And it may not even be deliberate language. It might not be a matter of I'm saying to myself, I'm not good at XYZ. It might simply be a belief that is so ingrained in me that I'm not even saying it anymore. It's just a part of who I am. Now, an example of this, and again, I've talked about this story a few times before, but when I was starting out my career, one of the very first ever jobs I had was in cold calling. I landed on this job that, funny story, I literally came from the country. I'd been doing direct selling. I'd grown this amazing business and I had to go and get my first job. I had moved up to the city and I had bills now. I had to pay for my own accommodation. I wasn't living at home anymore and I was thrown into the deep end. I had no university degree behind me, which I thought was what I needed to be successful. And I went into my first job. Now, to find a job back in those days, you had to open up a newspaper and you look through the listings. And I found this listing that sounded incredible. It said, uncapped earning potential, and then in little tiny writing underneath that, it said 100% commission based. Now, little old country girl me saw that and went, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I need. This is just what I've been doing. Because remember, I'd just come from a business that I'd grown in direct selling. I was one of the top 10 consultants in the country in the company that I was with. I was earning a great income. I loved what I was doing. And this sounded exactly the same. So I thought, hey, if I can get a legitimate job where my parents aren't on my back because I'm in direct selling, and now I can get a legitimate job doing 100% commission, uncapped earning potential, this sounds like a win. What I didn't know was this was cold, hard selling. There was no warm sales in here at all. There was no networking. Although, down the track, I actually found a way to do that, but different story for a different day. I ended up jumping into this role with no training and, of course, an attitude that at first was, I can do this because that's what I'd done. That was the proof that I had. So I took my duffel bag with all the junk in it that they'd given me for the day and I hit the ground walking and I was knocking on business doors because that's how it worked. You were given a map, you were given an area and you had to go in there and sell whatever you could. And you only earned from what you sold that day. The amount you earned was dictated by the markup that you made on the products. You had to bring them back and pay the warehouse back for what you'd sold. And whatever you'd sold them for over and above that was what you made for the day. So off I went, hit the ground running, off I went. Now, I knocked on first door, second door, third door. I got booted out. I got sworn at. I got all sorts of things. I got told to get out. Now, I could tell you about the shift I made very quickly in my language and my learning, which came from an incredible mentor I learned that I met the next day. Again, this is an episode I've already recorded, but the story here is this. On the 10th door, the 10th place that I walked into, I was ready to quit. I'd had enough. I had been kicked out, thrown out, sworn at, everything under the sun. Suddenly, I had proof that I was no good at this, or so I thought. And I walked into the last business. And as I walked into the last business, it was a bottle shop or a liquor store. And I walked in there and there was a guy behind the counter. I like to call him the Hulk because my memory tells me that's what he looked like. You know how you build things up in your mind. It's probably this tiny little Weasley guy. Now that I look back on it, it's probably the truth. But in my mind, he was this big hulky guy because that's what I've built up over the years. And then on my side of the counter was a rep from another company that was there trying to sell whatever he was trying to sell. Bit more experienced than me, but doing what I was doing. Well, as I walked in that door, the two of them who were in a conversation and obviously knew each other because they'd been dealing with each other for a while, I'm guessing, looked at each other, winked at one another, and then separated and allowed me to sneak on in to listen to my pitch. Now, my pitch was this, and if you've heard any training from me, you know why this didn't work. But I walked in and I said, hello, my name is Sam. I've got a few things here I'd like to show you. Can I have a few moments of your time, please? All of the wrong things that I could have done in that moment. But I learned my lesson. I had some great mentors, and now I'm teaching the right way to do this. But that's what I did as I walked in the door. The guy put his hand in my face and told me to get out. Now, as I turned around, completely deflated and ready to quit, walked towards that door, I felt the breath of the other rep on the back of my head, his spit literally hitting my neck as he yelled at me and said this: if that's how you're going to show up, you might as well quit now. You will never be successful. And I walked out to my car that day, and those words just rumbled around in my mind. Because the thing is, he gave me a big gift that day, but it was a gift that wouldn't show itself until decades later. For years, I was still so traumatized and upset by that one moment. But the reason I was so traumatized and upset by that moment was because he confirmed to me a reality that I had been building up inside of myself. These were words I'd already been saying. You will never be successful. You might as well quit now. And suddenly those words had so much more weight and so much more power for me. And I continued to use them again and again and again, so much so that they became such an ingrained reality for me over the next 20 years of my life. It took a lot of time for me to break that off. For me to use the words, I am successful, people want me to show up, I need to keep going, was really, really hard to change. I am successful, I need to show up today. I am successful, people are waiting to hear from me. Now, it's really funny because I can say to people as I'm doing coaching calls now, do you know that there is a possibility I could not have been here today to be able to help you grow the business and grow yourself if I had not simply changed my own self-talk? I could still be sitting behind a desk, working for an employer right now, having absolutely no connection with the world around me and the people around me, still using those words, I am not successful, I might as well quit now. Now, if I had done that, how many hundreds or thousands of people that I've had the absolute, and I mean it when I say honor, of being able to connect with and help. What if I'd not been able to do that because I'd allowed that self-talk, that personal talk that I was doing, that language that was literally becoming a part of who I was, if I had not broken that off? You know, a lot of people say to me, I can't believe that that's what you were doing and you could still be doing. But what if that's you today? What if today you're missing out on impacting somebody? It might not be hundreds or thousands of people, it could be one. It could just be your family. What if the language that you're using is stopping you having the impact and the ripple effect on the world around you? And it's as simple as just changing your language, of just speaking into yourself a new reality, of just declaring something over yourself of who you want to become rather than who you're afraid of being. Often I've found that language we use is based on an unrealized fear. Fear that we've not ever really proven to ourselves, just like the throwing thing. Now, I'm going to come back to that, circle back around many years later. So Greg and I were having a bit of a laugh about this recently. And I stopped using that language very early on in our relationship, but I never actually told my family this. And it was funny because we go to a barbecue or we go camping and we'd be around my family and the language would creep back in, but not because I was saying it, because the people I'd coached to saying it were repeating it back to me constantly. Now, the dumb blonde thing broke off pretty quickly because I actually told people I don't want to speak that over myself anymore. I'm not dumb. I'm super clever. People stopped using that pretty fast because that one is actually a pretty nasty one. But the catching thing was something that I had to prove everybody else wrong on. Now, I tried saying to people like my mum, like my sisters, I can catch. And they're like, no, you can't. We know you can't. We watched you growing up. You absolutely can't catch. So I kept my mouth shut and I thought, I'm just going to refuse, first of all, to use that language over myself. I'm not going to say that. I can catch. Absolutely. I am sporty. I've proven that I'm sporty now because I've started running. I've started doing the very thing that I thought I would never in my lifetime be able to do simply by starting with language. But here's the funny thing. We're sitting around a campfire one day, and Greg and I both know I can catch because he would often throw something to me and I'd catch it. And he'd laugh because I could catch things and I would shock myself, but even one-handed midair with absolutely no preparation. He would throw something across the kitchen, I'd catch it, and I'd just look dumbfounded at him like, oh my gosh, did you just see that? He didn't look dumbfounded because it was no shock to him. I was proving to myself that I was actually capable of far more than I ever thought I was capable of. So here's where it got hilarious, and this is where the language from my family stopped immediately. We're around a campfire. The campfire in the middle, we're all sitting. There were about 30 people sitting around this campfire in chairs, and it was right about that time that everyone's doing that ice bucket challenge. But it sort of took on a new lease of life while we were camping, and people were doing it to each other. They were pouring buckets of ice over each other's heads when they were unawares. Anyway, there was a bucket of ice sitting there, and my mum says, don't anyone throw any of that ice at Sam. She can't catch. And Greg went, what do you mean she can't catch? He's sitting next to my mum on the other side of the fire. He goes, watch this, Karen. He picks up a huge chunk of ice. He pegs it across the fire. And I would have been sitting, I'm going to say, a good 5-6 meters away from Greg, maybe further. So it was a fairly, he threw it a fairly long way. I'm in the middle of a conversation with someone else, but I just see in the corner of my eye Greg throwing something at me. And as he does it, I put my hand up in the air and I catch the ice one-handed without anyone preparing me for this. Now, I do my best to keep a straight face because I'm proud of myself right at this moment. I've shocked myself just a little bit. I've caught this big chunk of ice one-handed. Greg's got this huge grin on his face as I look across the fire because he realizes that we've just smashed everyone's belief of the one thing that was all that needed to happen was I needed to show them I was capable of what I'd now already proven to myself. So I catch this ice one-handed and I try to look really super cool at this moment, like, you know what? I totally knew I could do that. The look on my mum's face, my sister's face, even my stepdad's face, all of their jaws hit the ground. Now, no one said a word again after that. But this all changed with a shift in language. My mum was like, how long have you been practicing? I was like, I haven't been practicing. I said, I just stopped telling myself I can't catch. She went, rubbish. How long have you been practicing to do that? I haven't practiced, Mum. I swear I haven't been practicing. I just stopped telling myself I can't catch. I just started telling myself I can. I am sporty. I am capable. I can run. At which point, she started talking to me about the running thing. You'll hear all about that in the podcast episode, These Feet Weren't Made for Walking. But I want to remind you of something really important today, and that's this. This is not complicated. It's not rocket science. But it can be a challenge. What you say to yourself is creating a reality because you are training your subconscious brain to believe something and therefore behave in a particular way. When you say, I'm overweight, I'm unhealthy, what sort of things do? You eat the chocolate cake, you eat the donut. You don't go for a walk because you are speaking over yourself a reality that you probably don't want to be a reality, but the truth is, it's what you're telling yourself is happening. So what if you changed it up? What if you said, I'm learning to be healthy. I'm practicing being healthy. Now, if it's too hard for you to say, I'm healthy, I'm fit, I'm strong, I really do, by the way, challenge you to go that full way like I did. I'm a runner, I'm a runner, I'm a runner. It can feel crazy at first. But guess what? Today, I'm really happy to say to you, I'm a runner. I went for a 10K run yesterday, ticked another little box. We did and for me, as I was doing it, that once upon a time would have been a really huge challenge. But we did that as one, it was a competition fun run. It was at the Launceston 10. And the thing about that run was, for me, it was just a training run because I'm a runner and I run half marathons. Have I run a half marathon yet? No, but I do run half marathons. I'm training to run a half marathon and I'm using different language. So what are you? What language could you change today? What do you want to become that you've been saying one day? I'd like to. I hope to. If you're using any of that language, I want you to change it up. I'm learning, I'm becoming. The reason is when it becomes a part of your current reality, it becomes a part of your current behavior. I am healthy, I am fit, I am strong, I am a runner, or I'm a leader. By the way, if you're sitting there going, I can't say I'm a leader, I've only got 1 or 2 people in my team. I want you to remember this. Leaders have to be able to lead one person in order to lead many. If you're a parent, you're a leader. If you've got friends, you're a leader because you influence those people around you. Start using language to train your subconscious. Start using language that changes your reality. And start believing in yourself first because no one else is going to do that for you. You might be lucky enough, like me, to have a couple of people come around you who believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And if you're in our memberships, that's what I am for our members. But you know what? It's got to start with you. So what one little thing could you do today? What one little piece of language could you shift or change today to change your reality? I hope that this has spoken to maybe just a few people today. And if it has, me changing that language about I'm not successful, I will never be successful, I might as well quit now. I really hope that me shifting that language has been as impactful as I think potentially it could have been. In fact, I know that it's been impactful. And I know that me stepping into that true version of myself, which by the way is a daily practice. You don't think I don't wake up some days, many days going, ooh, I'm scared. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I feel like a failure. Absolutely, I think we all do. I think we all sometimes feel a little bit like, should I even be here? There are many times when I get out there and I'm speaking on a stage in front of hundreds or sometimes thousands of people. You don't think I stand there and go, oh my goodness, I feel like a fraud. I feel like I shouldn't be here. I don't know that I'm qualified for this. And very quickly, because I'm listening to that language, I shift it around and change it. Because I've got a responsibility to show up as the best version of myself in each and every moment that I'm here so that I can have the impact I was put on this earth to have, and so do you. So, what are you going to do today? What one action are you going to take off the back of this podcast that could change your life and change the lives of many others around you today? That's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please share this with someone that needed to hear this message. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. This is a podcast we provide because we want to be able to impact lives every single day without it costing any money. We want to provide a free resource that can change lives. So please help us spread the message, spread the word, and share this with a friend or two. Thanks again so much for spending this time with me, and we look forward to seeing you on the podcast again next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.